Okay. All right, I guess we could get started, Bill.
All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. I know that normally we would establish a quorum, but we're really not voting on anything today. So I don't think we need to do that unless anybody feels that we do. I'm not sure we'd have a quorum anyway. I think we need over 30 for a quorum. And so we're at 27 is the number I have. Do you have a different number, Pastor?
No.
Okay.
That's
so with that, I'll turn it over to Pastor to lead us in our litany of prayer.
So if you'll stay muted, I will speak the parts, but this is in the litany that was in the cover. So if you want to follow along and recite the congregation parts, with on mute, but so we have that sense of community together. So, O God of all power and love, we give thanks for your unfailing presence. O God of all power and love, we give thanks for the hope you provide in times of uncertainty and loss. O God of all power and love, we ask you to send your Holy Spirit to enkindle in us your holy fire. O God of all power and love, we ask you to revive us to live as Christ's body in the world. O God of all power and love, we ask to be a people who pray, worship, learn, break bread, share life, heal neighbors, bear good news, seek justice, rest, and grow in the Spirit. O God of all power and love, we ask you to be with us wherever and however we gather. Unite us in common prayer and send us in common mission, that we and the whole creation might be restored and renewed through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Okay, so we go from there?
Yep.
Okay. I want to thank everybody for being here this afternoon, particularly on a bright sunny day, which we usually don't get in March. And I was struck by the comment in here, we are together as one, no matter where we are. And Christ is with us, and Christ is with us here today as we talk about the business of the church. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that the annual report is based on some incredible work that was done by last year's church council. I'm new to the church council, as are many on church council this year, but I want it recorded that a big thank you to Barb Marquette and the entire church council for all they did last year to get us through what is arguably one of the most difficult years St. Peter and the world has faced in a long, long time. So a major thanks to that team for all of the effort. And I think it shows up in the annual report that was very well done and was written with love and a lot of sweat and tears and work. And I know that we don't always agree on where we need to go, but strong leadership always helps with that. And we had very strong leadership last year, and it showed in getting through this pandemic as well as we have so far. And hopefully we can continue to do that together, as church together, as one in Christ. And though we may disagree sometimes on how we get there, we come together in the end to make sure that we're doing the right things. So with that, I'd like to, what we normally do is open it up for any questions from we could go through report by report, but what I would rather do is see if there are any questions from the congregation on any of the reports that have been submitted, any particular concerns about the annual report. And if you have a question, just go ahead and unmute and let her rip. Or you can use the chat thing too. Does everybody want to get back out into the sunshine? Is that it today?
I haven't yet heard or watched the service for this weekend, but you had thanked Harold for making a note. Did Harold provide an update on the roof? I know he's been looking into that. And I know that has been of concern because of the damage that was incurred, additional damage. Is there any?
Harold didn't specifically speak to the roof, but he did talk about it at finance yesterday. We had a finance meeting. So maybe Harold could give us a brief update on the roof.
Thank you.
There it is, bottom right.
Okay. Well, for one thing, I think this week, Dave had somebody that is going to start repairing the drywall in the Narthex. And we kind of held off because we weren't sure if the leakage that was happening was coming from the replaced roof or if there was something new. So we wanted to check that first and then come to realize that the new leaking that there is in the flat roof. So the Narthex drywall is in the planning of being repaired shortly. As far as the flat roof now, Dave and I both are contacting several companies, individuals to come and take a look as soon as time allows or weather allows to see how severe the damage is or where it is. From what we understand or know and can see at this point is that I think there was a backup of water not getting to the drain on the flat roof, froze up under the snow. And then that water was backing up and coming in against the wall from the sanctuary and the flat roof, which meets right there at the office. And there's some cracking that we do see in the flat roof. So if it's a matter of just making some major repairs, I don't think we're at the point of having to replace the entire flat roof yet. I sure hope we aren't. So that's about where we're at, unless you have some other questions I can answer for you.
I presume we probably have already looked into insurance and if insurance covers any bit of this, or is this just part of wear and tear and things of that nature? Has anybody been able to look into that?
Insurance, have you checked into insurance?
And Dave Marquette, you may want to jump in on this too.
It's unmuted.
Yeah, I don't believe there will be any coverage for the flat roof because that's not damage. That's just plain aging and wear. It's not a question of hail damage or wind damage or anything like that.
Any other questions on the roof? Okay.
So, excuse me.
Oh.
So it's premature to ask for any kind of ballpark figure, correct?
We haven't had anybody come look at it yet, Sarita, so we have no idea what the cost might be or what the extent of the work might be. As Harold said, we're hoping it can be repaired, but the roofer may very well tell us it needs to be replaced. We don't know yet.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Any other questions on the annual reports? Barb?
There's 3 errors in the Pete's Pantry updates, I would say, not errors. There's 3 updates on Pete's Pantry on the first page of the annual report. We now serve from 12 to 2 o'clock on Wednesdays from 12 to 2. And Pete's Pantry, when it says Pete's Pantry was for a time able to obtain food from the local food bank, we still are obtaining food from the local food bank. And then Sherry Carney is no longer our volunteer contact. It's Betty Everest. Those are the 3 updates on that.
Okay.
So the whole line after food bank, but at this time is not using this resource. I just crossed that out, that part of the sentence out. We are receiving our food from the food bank. Right, Sue? She's still looking for. Yeah, that's true. Okay. We You're muted, honey. We can't hear you. Sue, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Yes, but you know, I must be reading a different thing because I don't remember putting Sherry Carney in. I did write the Pete's Food Pantry part, but is Sherry Carney's name in there someplace?
Yeah, it was.
What you're looking at though is the minutes from last year's annual congregational meeting. So
Mm.
that's
Okay,
the way it was then.
Okay, Gary, that makes sense. Yeah.
because the annual report itself on page 15, it sounded new to me, Barb. Okay,
Well, no, I just meant on this first page. Yeah, there was just some.
okay. Yep.
Okay,
got you.
so that stays as is because it was from, okay. So that's not any, yeah, that stays as is. Sorry, Gary. Thanks, Gary. All right.
There is a change in the membership report I noticed because I filled out the parochial report this year. We actually ended 2019 with 238 members. And then we had in early January, if you remember, we had 2 baptisms, Cody and Kyle. So that would add 2 people. And then we had Marjorie Quackenbush who passed and then who was a member. So she was removed from the rolls. And then also Jim Banks was removed from the rolls last year. There will be a couple more removals coming up this year, but they won't be reported in this report. So it should balance out, end up being 238 because we added 2 and then we end up losing 2. And then confirmed members should be then 203 because the 2 members we lost were considered confirmed members, but the ones in baptism are not. Does that make sense? Okay. I just wanted to get those numbers right so that we can reflect that next year a little bit more accurately.
Do we have an update on what we actually have for confirmed members right now?
It's 203. That's what's on our rolls. However, that's not necessarily the people that actually come to church, which is typical of most churches because you have many people who were confirmed in the church and they never transferred their membership. They don't necessarily go to a church, but they're still considered members. There is a hope. There's been a lot of discussion in the last month since we've had to send out mailings and other things like that. I think Barb Marquette and I are kind of going to start working on exactly how to get that list together on how to purge those rolls. And that will then result in a lot of phone calls and double checking. And then the church council will then have to vote on removal from the rolls. But it would behoove us to get our rolls in a little bit better order than they are right now.
Jan Ludwig and I have actually already started that work. We've gone through Servant Keeper, which Ken Tushiyama had originally set up, and we have looked at that and realized that we have a fairly large number of families that are actually, over the period of the last 5 to 6 years, have changed or left. So that 2 something will actually be, end up being under 100 or under 200. 72 families, but what the numbers are at this point, I can't tell you just yet. But I'm going to provide a report to council of what Jan and I found when we went through it. So.
Any other questions?
I make a motion, we accept the annual report for 2020.
Second.
Who was the second? It was Lynn. Lynn was the motion and Barb Marquette was the second. And I think we can do this with a show of hands. And give me time. All those in favor, show of hands. I'll scroll through this. It looks like, yeah, we even got a thumbs up from one. Okay. Looks like that passes. I don't know how official that is, but it's good enough for me. Nomination, the next thing on the agenda is the nomination election of Synod Assembly voting members, 1 male, 1 female. And I'm going to ask for any volunteers or if anybody wants to nominate anybody, Pastor, maybe you can tell them how it's going to be conducted this year. Actually, we could sort of all go, I think, because it's going to be done on Zoom and you could watch in if you wanted to. But go
Yeah.
ahead, Pastor.
Well, voting members, it will be different. I think what they're going to do is they'll probably record it for people who want to watch, but I don't think that because there's votes. And so I'm not exactly sure how they're going to work that, but I think that that's part of the logistics of this, but it will be via Zoom. It'll be on May 15th, which I don't know what day that is. Hold on, I'll look. Yeah, May 15th is a Saturday. So it will be a Saturday. I don't know how long it will be. I don't expect it to be all day, but you know, there's not as much business. We don't have a bishop to elect. I mean, I know that there are elections and there'll probably be a few motions, but or memorials or whatever you call it. So it's fairly easy to participate. It would be great to have, you know, somebody who may not have participated before that is comfortable using Zoom. You might learn some interesting stuff, or, you know, it's up to you. I'll be there regardless.
So we may not have anybody stepping up to do it today, but if you are interested in taking part in that, Barb, you want to unmute?
Yeah, I would be interested in participating, especially since it is Zoom. I don't have to actually be there and I have to worry about boarding the dogs.
Okay, we have our first volunteer. Do we have a male volunteer? And I can't see all the screens.
Well, I can see everyone, Bill, and nobody's
can.
raising their hand.
Okay. All right.
Unless
well,
Tom is raising his hand and we can't see him.
So Pastor, myself, and Barb Hefner will work on finding someone to do it with Barb. All right. Other business.
Bill,
Hold on,
Bill.
Lynn Kraft. Lynn, go ahead.
I'm on a Synod task force and I'll be at the Zoom meeting because of that. So if nobody else from our congregation wants to volunteer, I could be a
Great.
delegate too.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay, super. I don't think we have to vote them in, so I think we can move forward. An update on worship and COVID-19 restrictions update. I think I'll leave that to Pastor, but basically I think we're at where we have been at. We're following the guidelines from both the Synod and the county and the state. And we've been, I'm encouraged by the vaccines and how many people have been able to get the vaccine. And we continue to look at our options going forward. And we would really like to get back into some sort of in-person service. But I think it's still going to be at least through April, if not a little longer. And so Pastor is putting up, and I'll turn this over to her to show the benchmarks that we've been using.
Okay, so this is a document, this document we sent out probably back, I want to say it's late October, early November, was something we voted on. Melissa Raditz, you may find in the notes that I have that wrong. So you may want to check our council minutes from last year to see exactly once we voted on it, because it was sent out shortly after. So if I have that month wrong, I just for the minutes, I just want to get it right. What we have done is we have looked at our county numbers, what the Start Safe dashboard is on a 7-day rolling average, and we kind of set these benchmarks. Right now, we are in level E, and I'm going to show you this. I'm going to share with you a different screen so that you can see what that looks like. Oh, hold on. This is all about, this is juggling act. So let me see. There we go. Share this screen. So this is the Safe Start map, and on the benchmark document there is a link, so you can find this link yourself, and you basically do the drop down menu. I went to Calhoun County, and that's how you get these test results. Right now, as you can see, I can't see it because I've got it blocked, but you see there's an increase in the number of cases. Let me see if I can shrink that a little so I can, yeah, so oh, little stinker. So see that arrow there that's going up? That basically, there's an elevated incidence growth. So what you look at is the daily cases per million, And a few days ago, we were actually back in late February, we were dropping. It was like 141. Now in the last few days, as of the 3rd, we've gone back up to 185 cases per million. So that's pretty significant, and means that our percentages, if we go back to, now I'm going to stop sharing this and share the other benchmark document. So what the levels mean for the state are that the cases per million per day exceeds 150, or a positive test percentage exceeds 20%. All those statistics may not mean much, but when you start looking at the graph, that's what gives you an indication that shows what our collective county is experiencing. So that's a return to all virtual worship. But a few days ago, we were actually in this level D, but now the cases are starting to go back up. I hope that is only temporary and that we'll start to see a downward trend again. We had a downward trend for about, I think it was 45 days or something, or at least 40 days. And so I was looking forward to discussing maybe outdoor worship, but right now we've gone back to something where even outdoor worship is not recommended. That means that our church leadership has, kind of adopted this, let's be safe and take care of the most vulnerable. I liked what Barb Marquette put in her report as president from last year, that it has been agonizing for our church council leaders and other leaders in the church to have to make the decisions between what we really want to happen and what we know is protecting the most vulnerable. But for right now, we just have to watch the numbers and be as safe as possible until we can get more people vaccinated and get to see these numbers trending down. So any questions about this document or about the numbers and cases, or any other questions about worship and COVID?
I think it's worthy to note that this is on our homepage of our website. It links you to that document. At the very top, there is a link within that document that you click on that will take you to that initial page that she was showing, that you select Calhoun County. So if you want to go in there and check and see how we're doing, or anybody in our congregation, they can do that. And it also should be noted that I don't believe anything in that document states anything about vaccinations and if people are vaccinated or not vaccinated. So that may be something that the council may have to go back and revisit, but that was not part of that discussion in creating that document for benchmarks for us.
Other questions, comments?
No, just a note on that. So with regard to the vaccination, it's not known at this time how long that's going to be effective for people. It is most effective 2 weeks after you've received your second dose. They're not sure if it is working against the Brazilian strain, which is now in Calhoun County. And so we have 2 strains now that are more contagious than the original strain. And so they're still doing studies with regard to the Brazilian strain. Additionally, that vaccine doesn't prevent you from getting it. You're still going to get it. It's just teaching your body how to react to it. So you can still get it and give it to someone. So masks are still recommended.
Masks, social distancing, all of the things we've continued to do. And that also includes limited indoor gatherings. So, and I do know that this is not a decision that any of us take lightly. I miss deeply the opportunity to worship with you in a space with you. And, my dining room table is hardly the altar that I expected for a year as a pastor. So that's been a challenge. And so we're working on it. That's all I can tell you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. We'll move on then to the survey that was conducted, and I'll again turn it over to Pastor. She's got the slides and can explain it.
Yep. So we had a very good response for our survey. I appreciate all the people who did respond to this survey, because we had 45 we had 45 responses. And so that to me means that there is really this information seems to reflect what the majority of our congregation is kind of feeling, and thinking. So thank you for everyone who filled this out and took the time. It wasn't a lot of time, but it really does give us some good information going forward in 2021 as we start to move back into some kind of normal behavior, just to kind of respond to that. So going over the questions, and I won't spend all day on this, but I think it's fair for everyone to have a chance to see these results. The first question was talking about the variety of worship resources that we are providing and how often someone utilizes those. The majority, the 60% of those who responded said they are using them weekly. So we know that we're reaching people. There's only let's see, just about 4 people who said, yeah, I don't use any of that. But at least we know that the efforts are worthwhile and they are bearing fruit. So the next question is, which one of these resources are you using? And they can select all that apply. So 87% of the respondents said the online weekly worship was important for them. And 56% like the faith chat videos. I appreciate that little note of support. I will, on a side note, say some days it's easier to have inspiration than others. In certain parts of the year, it's easier to have the time to ruminate on things like that. So over the summer, I did them with a lot more frequency, but when we get into fall and different seasons, it makes it a little bit more difficult. But I will provide them as they come to me. We have a Zoom Bible study. 36% are participating in a Zoom Bible study of some sort. So that's very encouraging. The other Facebook check-ins, we've got about 24%, and then it starts to drop off as we're using those resources that we are trying to provide. The next question is, what other options for worship and spiritual formation would you like to have provided by our worship team? Now, this was a comment question, so it's not something we can really quantify with percentages and graphs and things like that, but I will tell you, we received 14 comments to this particular question, and the three overall points I got from those 14 comments were the overall theme of these comments suggests that there is a strong interest in returning to worship in our sanctuary as soon as it is safe. So that was a overarching theme with all those comments, the majority of people. So we know that you want to get back into the sanctuary, but so many of the people that responded also said when it's safe. So it wasn't like they were saying we have to do it now regardless of the consequences, but there is this deep interest in coming back together as a community, which is what I would expect. A few comments pointed to having the worship service filmed in our sanctuary rather than at my dining room table. And certainly there are challenges for that, and there might be an expense to upgrading equipment so that we can do that. But George and I are pursuing that with an IT consultant. We're getting a quote in the next week or so, and then we'll kind of know if we can get that kind of technology, and then we can start doing that. Because quite truthfully, we may still want to provide some sort of online presence, recording of our worship, even following the pandemic, being behind us. So there is that. So those people that made those comments, I agree with you. I think it's really wonderful to be able to see our sanctuary and feel like you're there as much as you can be. But the last comment is there were a lot of requests to accommodate some sort of option for Holy Communion. Because we're not gathering in the way we would normally do communion, that's why we haven't been participating in it. It's a little bit different than drive-by ashes. Holy Communion is a sacrament. And so our Lutheran understanding of what it means to have communion is a little bit more than just, I have some bread and wine, why don't you drive up and get it because that'll make you feel better. It has a different theological meaning for all of us. Some people agree with me, some people don't, but as the pastor, that's where I am with that. That doesn't mean that we will not be able to get into some sort of Holy Communion, but it's probably going to be once we're back together in some sort of worship situation, whether that's outdoors or indoors with a limited service. Questions about that so far? Because we're going to move on to the next section, unless you have questions. Okay, no questions, so we'll move on to the next section. And so we get down to returning to in-person worship. This was another question we really wanted to make sure we provided for people, because we wanted to get an idea of when we are able to get back in person, what do we want that to look like? So when our local government amends the guidelines for indoor social gatherings, what is, what best describes your attitude toward returning to our sanctuary? And overwhelmingly, 50% of our respondents said that they would return at the first opportunity, but they had some concerns and they want to see those precautions. We had a couple, a few that said, not sure, some that said they'll return regardless, and we know those people, but that kind of gives us an idea of how much people want to get back into the sanctuary. And then what are some of the things that would signal that you want to return to in-person worship? And we had several categories listed: local businesses being open again, restaurants and schools, and the number of coronaviruses going down, and the number of vaccinated people going up. So we had about 30% that said that they wanted all of these things. Some said they're not sure. So we still have a little bit of hesitation. We're seeing that. If the local guidelines are amended, what do you want the level of attendance to be in our sanctuary? 69% said that they would like it to be half filled. So that's very telling, because it may mean that we will have to have multiple services where we'll have you make a reservation and you can come at different times. So that's something for our church council to consider once we are able to start to do in-person in the sanctuary gatherings, so indoor gatherings. Small group meetings were highly effective. People want to come back to small groups, so I think we'll be seeing small groups before we get any kind of worship, because as we know, those numbers are fewer, so you have like 10 people or less that can gather. So there's a likelihood we can get back to small groups, committee meetings and things like that. This was a particular one that I wasn't sure how it was going to come out. So we might have to revisit this when we do come back into some kind of regular way, because several people wanted to have the question asked, do we still want to have church at 9:30, or do we want to alter that? A lot of people in COVID have been getting up later. Things have changed. So 42% said they want it to start at 10. And almost 30% said keep it at 9:30. But then there is these others that you have at 9 o'clock. You have 2 that said at 8:30 in the morning. You had 3 that said at 11, and then some that said 10:30. So I'm wondering if we took out the other options and we have a 10 o'clock service and a 9:30 service, where that would level out among this chunk of people that didn't vote for either of those times. So that may be something to consider going forward. Okay, so before we move into the communications section, any questions? Am I going too fast, or is everybody okay? Okay. All right, so communication. That was another big one that people want, because it's really difficult for us to have a regular communication. I mean, even this Zoom meeting is kind of unusual, but we're learning to live with it. 90% of people, and this is like, again, select all that apply. So it doesn't mean that they chose email over Facebook or whatever. It just means that we're seeing that the majority of ways that people that communication works for them: email, a phone call, or a direct mailing. Facebook and Google Calendar are less effective for the 45 that responded. So I think we're doing a pretty good job with email, but we might need to change some of the materials that we send out. It might be something that is a little bit more substantive rather than just a quick email that has like one little announcement on it or something. And that's something that is, we're working on that, right? Then the next one is, I'm going to stop sharing because it's way too many responses. The next question is, we received 21 responses to what information would be helpful in making you feel connected to the mission and ministry of St. Peter Lutheran Church. So most of the responses indicated an interest in receiving council minutes, a pastor's report, and financial updates regularly. Now, Melissa Raditz, you mentioned earlier about the benchmark document being on our website. Have you been able to put the council minutes on, or the approved council minutes up there yet, or no?
Yeah, it's under the communication tab. I
Okay.
believe I communicated that with a couple of you from council already.
That's what I thought. I just didn't want to say something that wasn't true. So if you go to our website, rather than send out large amounts of documents in an email, we are making those just like it would be on the bulletin board at church. We are making the approved council minutes, not the ones from just the last meeting, because we have to approve the minutes from, so it's about a month behind. But we make those minutes available to you just like it would be on the bulletin board. And so you can go to the church's website and you can access that. You can access the pastor's report that was approved, all those things. So right now, that's the best way. If you have other ideas or would prefer to get those reports in an email, please let us know. But right now, we just thought that it would be a little bit more nimble if we could just post it in one place and you could go there if you wanted to look at it, but you don't have to be inundated with a bunch of emails, because not everybody reads those emails, but there are a lot of people who might want to seek that information. Another is some suggested a calendar either be mailed or available online, and that might improve communication about events in which members might participate. Barb Marquette, you were working on getting that Google Calendar updated. Did you want to make a comment? She's trying to get unmuted. I can.
Yeah,
see.
sorry. Yeah, I was trying to temporarily unmute and then it didn't work for me. Anyway, actually what I was doing the other day was first learning Google Calendar, which I did play with for a little while. And I think I really could do that very easily. Get it updated and keep it updated with what's going on. It's very easy to print out. I figured that out too, so I could mail it also. So, but it does need a little bit of work before I do that. So it will take me probably at least another week to get it updated before I could start sending it out. I'm also working on a way to send the birthdays and things out, things that people have been asking if, we could do. So.
Yes, thank you, Barb. So Barb, for those of you who don't know, has been volunteering as our kind of fill-in admin person. And so she and I are working on ways to improve the communication. The other comment that came from this question, or the other comments that came from this question, was that we're doing a pretty good job of communicating. Not everybody had that comment, but the majority of those 21 responses said communication is good, but there's always room for improvement. And I think providing these items on the website for people and sending out a calendar. Now, Melissa Raddatz made a good point to me in the chat. She said that the Google Calendar is available on our website, so anyone can go there. And you can print the calendar yourself. So if you really want, if you want to know what's going on the Google Calendar, that's not necessarily updated yet. So yes, we have a vehicle for it. No, we have not been doing a very good job of keeping it updated, but we're getting better at it. So this survey, it kind of gave us a little bit more momentum to kind of figure out how we can address these concerns that are obviously coming up for people. Okay.
I will say, as soon as Barb updates it though, or she makes any updates, it will reflect automatically into the website because the way it's linked in there. So, and then also to notate, if you click or hover over the events tab, that's where you'll get a drop down under, and it just says communication. You can click on that. That's where you get the links to church council or pastor's reports. So there are some, functions there for communication should people want to utilize them.
Okay, so now going back to this, the demographic information, I'm going to go over this briefly. Most people have been coming to St. Peter. Most people that responded have been coming to St. Peter for a long time. The age, I'm not surprised, is in that 50 to 70 plus range, but we do have some that said they didn't want to answer, which is fine. And then the closing thoughts, that was another one that was comments. So I'll just kind of summarize those. We had 28 responses to the question of how can St. Peter Lutheran best serve you and our community during this pandemic? So thank you for everyone who made comments about the church staff, George and I, who are leading worship and the other spiritual resources that we're providing. That was a really good affirmation that kind of reaffirms that we're doing as much as we can and that it's appreciated. In this time of pandemic, when we're not able to be together with one another, it's so hard to know if we're hitting the right notes. And so this survey definitely supported that overall we are getting it to you the way you need it and the way we can best provide it. There were an awful lot of comments that lamented the loss of our in-person experiences, but understanding the need to be safe. And so to me, this reflects the outpouring of love that this faith community has for one another, and this real sense of being bound together and partnership in ministry. So again, it was very affirming to me as a pastor to know that we have a people that are strongly bonded and strongly united to stay together, even in the difficult times. And then also there were a lot of responses that really applauded the efforts of our outreach committee, both with Pete's Pantry and all the other Sally's Kitchen and the Lakeview Food Pantry and all of the other things that we've been doing. So again, so in terms of what can best serve you, there were no new ones saying, well, I want this. But there were an awful lot that said, this is what you're doing right. So so that's the survey. So any questions on the survey or any follow-up questions that you think we might need to revisit with the congregation?
Thanks, Pastor, for that. And I want to concur that I thought it was a pretty favorable survey, and but we also took away from it some ideas going forward that we can improve on, and that's always helpful. And communications is something that's always a concern, and making sure that we are communicating. And in that vein, I would hope that if anybody has a concern or an issue, they would pick up the phone and tell me about it or report it to me, because we will do our best to try to be transparent and share with you any information that we do have and what we're trying to do. And we, again, may not agree, but hopefully you will give me an opportunity to explain why we are where we at or why we made the decision. Any questions, any other questions or concerns or comments on the survey? That sunshine is calling everybody. Members' comments. Does anybody have any comments, suggestions, input? Dave, I see Dave Marquette raised his hand.
Yeah, got a message from the contractor on the Narthex repair while we were having our meeting here. He hopes to start Thursday or Friday.
Okay, that's on the roof leak that we're talking about?
Yeah.
Or is that inside? That's inside.
That's the
Inside.
the ceiling inside in the Narthex.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Did we receive any more damage to that as a result of that leak?
No, all the damage from the most recent leak was in the office itself. There was nothing in the Narthex or further damage to the Narthex ceiling.
By the way, we were lucky on that leak in that it was not over a computer or over the copy machine. It leaked in front of the counter in the office, and we were lucky. It took out some ceiling tiles and drenched the rug, but it didn't take out any equipment, which is great news. Any other comments?
Bill,
Yes.
I have a question. This is Nancy. They said that they didn't think the insurance would pay for the roofing, but I know we just had to put in a claim for the ice damage for what we had to take care of inside. I was wondering if it would take care of what happened in the office and the walls.
I'll let Dave answer that, but my understanding is that that this wasn't the issue of necessarily just the ice. It was where it met and where it was held. But Dave, maybe you want to address that?
Yeah, I would certainly be glad to call the insurance company, but the damage inside the office, I doubt if it would even meet the deductible for the insurance to replace the ceiling tile. And as long as we didn't have computer damage or any other structural damage, it was just basically ceiling tile that were damaged. I can contact them, but I doubt if we would get anything over and above what our deductible is.
Okay, I didn't know what the deductible was. That makes sense.
Well, on that same, what about the Narthex ceiling? I don't know how much that's going to run either, but would any of that be able to I know the roof part, the outside wasn't covered, but would any of the inside? I
I will
had
cover that
never
question
thought
with them
about that.
also, Gary. I don't
Okay.
know.
Yeah, I've never thought about this, the inside coverage stuff, but you might check with them on that also, just to.
I will cover all those items when I will give them a call and see. I personally am not very impressed with Brotherhood Mutual as far as their response to coverage issues. I think everybody's aware that I went back and fought with them 3 different times over what we consider to be hail damage to the roof. They denied all 3 times. My house, 7 houses up the hill, got a new roof because of hail damage. And I know there were other houses in the neighborhood that also got new roofs. So I can't give Brotherhood a very high mark for responsiveness to claims.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions? Okay, well, I want to thank everybody, and I guess we will close with a closing prayer. Pastor, if you could lead us in a closing prayer. I want to thank everybody for taking the time today to be with us, and for your patience and understanding, and for adapting to this format. We're doing pretty good for a bunch of older folks on Zoom. I've learned way more about Zoom than I ever wanted to know.
Yeah, if I
You're
had
not
known.
including
if I had
Melissa
known
and
in
Austin in
time-
that.
Yeah, if I had known in time, I would have bought stock. I mean, you got to imagine that they have had like a huge, increase in their stock prices.
I will say this, our Thursday morning Griffin discussion group went to Zoom and moved the time to 7:30, and we went from 4 people to 10. We now have 10 people. So anybody who's interested in a great discussion on Thursday mornings at 7:30, where you could actually discuss things in your pajamas with a cup of coffee in your hand, send me an email and I'll put you on the distribution.
All right. That being said, I'll ask everyone to mute, and we will close with prayer. Dear God, our gracious giver, your Son, Jesus, taught us that where our treasure is, there our hearts will be also. Teach us to love people more than money, relationships more than things, and you above all, that the way we live will reflect what we truly value and believe. We ask this in the name of Jesus, who emptied himself in love for us and now reigns with you and the Holy Spirit forever and ever. Amen.
Thanks, Pastor, and thank you, everyone. Hope to see everybody soon.
And thank you, Bill.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you all.
Thank you, Bill.
Good to see everybody.